Hi everyone, and welcome to the book Refuge, and welcome to a video I promised in my last couple videos, and that is a breakdown of the Mafia Romance trope. I recently read the entire Cora Riley, the Camorra Chronicles, and the Bound in Blood series, and I really wanted to dive into it, but to start it off, I want to talk about what the Mafia trope is. I know it sounds self-explanatory, but there is some nuance within it, as there is with any trope, as well as give you some other recommendations that maybe can start you off into the Mafia trope, because straight up, it's a rough trope. It's one of those that if you like it, you love it. If you're afraid of it, you're never going to want to try it. And if you like darker romances, you should definitely check it out, but maybe you want to know a little bit more about it and what it is that's appealing to me, and see if it's something you want to give a try, as well as a few different recommendations I have for you, because I have 3 that are a little more ease you into it, and the rest are all pretty, it's gonna go there. But you know, that's what I do. So, Also, I want to say at the front end of this, I have recently become an Amazon affiliate, so I will have a link down below if you want to purchase any of these books. If you have KU, all of the Cora Riley books are on KU, so, you know, don't worry about that. But if you do, just so you know, if you want to help me out, you can purchase through that link. If you don't want to, who cares? But just wanted to let you know, because some of you were asking about wanting to purchase the books that I recommend to you. So let's kind of dive in about what is the Mafia trope and what are some of the common themes you're going to see in pretty much every single one. Because the thing with this is, if you don't like these 3 tropes that I'm going to talk about, you should probably just stay away from this, because every single one of the books has one of the variations of this trope, and a very, very, very small percentage aren't going to be about them. Okay, so the main things you're going to see within the Mafia world, what do we see with it? Well, it is old families, crime families, brutality. They have an old set of thinking. They have the old ways and traditions and patterns that they follow. There is one Mafia group that I'll introduce you to that they're about breaking the traditions of their past. But for the most part, we're talking about Italian families. There's some Russian. Sometimes there is Latinx. It's a pretty, you know, there's one kind of people we're usually dealing with. These are almost exclusively alpha males. Very possessive, very, I will kill you if you look at my woman the wrong way. And then some of them are sweet cinnamon rolls for their women, and some of them are just as dominating with their women as they are with everyone else. The women, a good portion of them, I mean, it's the split with everything else. Like, a lot of them are submissive because they have been raised in this world. So you will see the trope of either like the virgin bride being traded in this arranged marriage, or you see the person who is completely bucking against it and they want anything else but to live the way their families brought them up. Or we have the outsider, who then it's kind of like a forbidden romance, because that's the thing within here. They want to keep their blood pure. Arranged marriages are kind of the #1 way we see people getting put together. There's a few, you'll also see enemies to lovers happen, because maybe there'll be 2 different families trying to form a truce, or people getting kidnapped. That happens. So there's enemies to lovers that way, as well as forbidden love. Like I said, if there's an outsider or someone who's not within the top, you know, they're not part of the like families, or maybe like a made man who's not part of the family falls in love with a daughter, and then there can be problems that way. So those are kind of the main things you're going to see, but it is for the most part filled with brutal alpha males. These are all people who are initiated in when they're very young. They've had their first kills when they're very young, and it's intense. It's very intense. So like I said, I want to start off with some that I think make it easier to get into this genre. The first one I ever read, I didn't even know it was a Mafia book when I started it, because it is kind of a spoiler for this book. It's something that happens really soon in the book, because it's kind of, you know, the main point of the story. But I didn't know what this book was about, because it's a secret to some part of it. But because I'm sharing with you books that are falling into the Mafia trope, you're going to know that anyway by me sharing it. But the first book I ever read that was a Mafia, and I didn't even know it, was I read The Italian by T.L. Swan. So this was actually one of my favorite reads of last year. It's on my top 10 favorite romance list. This is about a girl. Hold on, I need to remember the names real quick because it's been a while. Yes, so this is about Olivia and Enrico Ferrero. And Olivia is an Australian, and she's on vacation with her friend, and they are traveling through Europe together. She meets this really hot Italian police officer when she's in Italy, and she ends up staying the weekend with him, and they have this beautiful, like, sexual experience together. And then she has to continue on traveling with her friend, but she promises to come back and see him in 2 weeks when she's coming back through. And this is kind of like a lust at first sight. It's a, one night stand novel it starts off as. And then while Olivia is gone, some shit goes down. Enrico, who's been a police officer for a while, his father and grandfather die in a car accident. At least that's what he's told. But it was actually a hit. And his father and grandfather are the head of the mob in Italy. And Enrico doesn't know this. He knew his family was in some dirty dealings, but they mostly kept him away from it because they wanted to let him be a police officer. Like, they were okay with that being a thing. But when both his father and grandfather die, there's no one else to take over this endeavor. So during the time while Olivia is gone, this 2-week time, he finds out they're dead. He gets told he needs to take over this enterprise, and he doesn't want to do it. He's a police officer. He's a law-abiding citizen. The thing is, there's more people on the line than just himself. His whole family, this is how they make their money. All of their people, because they run brothels and clubs, all of these women, they would have no one to protect them or take care of them. The people that worked for his family would be killed or scooped up by other outfits, and it would just be horrible. And so Enrico has to take this up. And when Olivia comes back to town, and there's also a faux pas with her, but he acts like a completely different person. And he says he never wants to see her again, and that he's sorry that they ever had their fling, and he just wants her to leave. And of course, that's a lie, but it's enough to piss Olivia off, and she goes back to Australia. And then we have a time jump here, and Enrico has had to take over this enterprise, and he's become a very hard and bitter person for all the things he's had to do and the things he's had to give up. But he's never forgotten about Olivia. And a few years later, he works it out so that her job, which she's in fashion, he works it out so that she gets a job offer to come back to Italy. And he orchestrates that so that they can meet again. And there are a lot of things in the way now. He's taken over this criminal enterprise. She's an outsider. She doesn't understand his world. And he's supposed to have an arranged marriage for the better of his family. But these two people, if they can get over this hurt between them, they love each other so much. So this is really intense, but it's more of the relationship part that's intense than the violence and the mafia part. This is still a dark romance because the two of them have a lot of stuff they need to work out. So that's why this one is dark. It's not as much dark for the mob part of it. So that's why I say it's kind of like easing you into it. Then I also want to talk about Hate to Want You by Alicia Rai. This isn't one I particularly loved myself, but this is about some mafia families who these two, the families ended up having a falling out, but they used to be dating when all this went down, and they still cared about each other, but they made a deal that once a year they would meet. It's on one of their birthdays. I think it's on her birthday. They would meet and have sex, and they would never talk about it for the rest of the year. And then at the beginning of this book, the girl doesn't show up, and she doesn't show up for a couple years. and now she's back in town. And so our hero wants to know what was going on. So that one that's a traditionally published book too. Alicia Wright, this is pretty dark, and it's a hate to love, and it's also like a misunderstanding romance too. Another one that's a bit more ease you in is the OMalley series by Katie Robert. So this is also traditionally published. This is her series with Forever Romance. And I've read the first two. I've actually ordered the rest of the series. I'm going to be reading it with one of my friends who wants to read the whole series. So I'll probably reread the first two and read with her. And this is about Teague OMalley. And his family is trying to broker a peace with the Sheridan family. And so him and Callie, they are going to have an arranged marriage. And so this is kind of cute in the way where they want to make it work. You know, they want it to be smooth and they want to be as happy as possible. And I think that Teague, although of course he's written as being super tough and, you know, ready to do this with his family, he definitely wants his marriage to be one of mutual respect, if not love. And that's something that, like, the two of them care about, but their families and the Enterprise doesn't care if they like each other or not. And in fact is a little bit worried about what their allegiances will be if the two of them actually are in love with each other and not just doing this for business. So that's what's kind of interesting is, in this case, it's like the family set up this relationship. Like, they want them to get married, but they also want to make sure who their loyalties aren't with their spouse, even though they're making them marry this person. So it's a very interesting setup. And I've read the sequel to this one too, which is a hate to love. It's called The Wedding Pact. And I really liked that one as well. So this one I also think could help ease you into it. Goes out. I'm kind of skipping through some of these because I want to get into the Cora Riley books, which I'm going to really deep dive in. And then another one I want to mention that has Latinx, like mafia, mob, crime ties would be the Twist Me trilogy by Anna Zares. So this one kind of grows into it being about that. So this is a very dark trilogy. It was the first one I'd ever read like this. This is actually a kidnapping situation. This man who is an arms dealer, so he's not directly part of the mob, but you'll see where I'm going with this in the beginning. But he sees this girl when she's 17. He sees her at a club, and when she graduates high school and turns 18, he kidnaps her and takes her to his private island where only him and his maid, who the maid is actually her bodyguard as well, live. And the only way on and off the island is on his private plane. So she's literally just stuck here and there's no choice. And it's very dark, and it definitely involves like Stockholm Syndrome, because as the series goes on, and like she has no choice. Like, he has connections to all the governments. He sells arms to the mafia and to the military. And it just, once things progress in that relationship, we end up seeing the mafia side that I'm talking about. So while this one wouldn't be completely classified as that, the way things are set up, and there's some spin-off series as well, you'll see what I mean. So I'm warning you, this series is very intense. I only gave this series a 3.5 overall, but if you want to give that a go, I'd be interested to talk with you about it if you want to. Anna Zares does not pull her punches, that's for sure. So those are kind of some other recommendations I have if you want to check out, if you want to try some on. It's hard to say lighter side, guys. It's the mafia. You're not here because you're looking for light books, right? So let us get into the Bound in Blood series, which I really want to dive into because I read the entire series in 3 days and I have so many feels. So I'm mostly making this because I want you to comment about it or join my Discord group, which is always listed down below, and come talk to me because I want to talk about these characters. All of these books are on Scribd as well. So after I read them, some of them I went back and listened to them, and I just... So we have some setup we have to do. So the Bound in Blood series, I highly suggest you read it in order. and you shouldn't read the Kimura Chronicles before you read Bound in Blood. So here's the thing. Everyone will tell you can read books in whatever order you want, and I understand that. But I believe to get the full impact of this and to see where these character arcs happen, some of the arcs start in someone else's book and then they hop, you know, and so there's arcs and waves going throughout the whole series. I can understand how you could jump to whatever book you want because there is some situations in the book that you end up seeing from 3 or 4 different points of view because there are different love stories happening all at the same time. So if you read this one book first, you'll see this scene, and then if you skip ahead 4 books and read this one, you'll still get to see this scene, but from this point of view. But reading it in order, I think just gave me the best buildup of who these were and what the family dynamics were. And this whole series too, it takes place over about, I think we're like 16 years into it so far. And it's just much more satisfying watching the growth of the characters if you have read it in order. Okay? So let us get started. I need to set up kind of the different families we have right now. So we deal with 3 main families throughout the Bound in Blood series and the Kimura Chronicles. We're dealing with the New York Familia, which is headed up by Luca Vitello, and I'm going to butcher every name. Sorry, I'm not Italian or anything else. Then we have the Chicago Outfit, which is headed by Dante Cavallaro. And then we have the Las Vegas Kimura, which is run by the Falcones, who there's a couple different Falcones who run it throughout the series, and I'll get to that as we go. So the first book in this series is called Bound by Honor, and this is an arranged marriage between Luca Vitello, who has just become the it's called the capo. It's going to be called the capo no matter which group we're talking about. Who's just become the capo of the Familia, and he's only 22, and he is getting married to Aria Scuderi, who is the oldest daughter of the second in command of the Chicago Outfit. And we are trying to broker peace. At the beginning of this series, there's been, you know, mob wars breaking out. And so this oldest daughter of the second in command is going to marry Luca so there can be peace between Chicago and New York. And so we have Aria, who she is betrothed to Luca when she's 15, and then when she's 18, it's just a couple days after her birthday, and she's being married to Luca. So this is a arranged marriage scenario. And something else that you will see mentioned time and time again in this series is that the woman is supposed to be a virgin when she gets married. If she's not, we run into problems. It's just sexist that way, guys. I'm sorry. That's what you're in for if you're reading Mafia. And Aria is terrified. She's heard horrible things about Luca. He is a horrible person. They're in the mob. He killed his first man when he was 11. He killed a man by crushing his throat, so his nickname is the Vice. He is a dark and scary man, and Aria is terrified. And so this is us getting to see how Aria will maneuver things. So I'm not going to talk about this relationship at all. That's the part of it that's a secret. You know, it's like how that will all work out. Couple things I'll say about this one. It's great getting introduced to the main bosses. The second one's going to be about one of the other bosses. And I really like Luca. I think he's a very interesting character. I think the dynamics of his Familia are very intriguing. And in the beginning, he was probably my favorite capo. That changes later. But Aria is easily the most frustrating of all the women because she is the oldest of 4 siblings. We're going to see all of her siblings find love in this series. And she's the most frustrating because Luca is a scary man. And his love for her is just as like consuming and terrifying, and it's intense. And the way this woman tests him sometimes is just bonkers to me. And a lot of times I'm on Luca's side and I'm like, girl, I would do what he does because you're crazy. So just warning you for that. But it's still really cool to start to meet everybody, and everybody's so young in this first one, where, like I said, this series takes place over 16 years. And it is cool to see how Aria and Luca start out, because though Aria will time and time again frustrate you so much, she will frustrate you. She has a really cool character arc, and so that's something you just gotta know. You gotta suffer through this stupid girl to get to where she won't be anymore. So the next book we have is Bound by Duty. This is about Dante Cavallaro, the capo of the Chicago outfit, and he was married once before, and his wife died of cancer, and they never had children before that happened. So he's only like in his late 20s. No, he's in his 30s, because they got married when he was 20, and they were married a long time and didn't have kids. And now he's been a widow for a few years, and they want him to remarry. So he gets promised to a widow, which this is kind of a big deal because, like I said, most men are supposed to marry a virgin. But since he doesn't feel like he can love someone again, he's fine with marrying a widow because he figures that person will also have loved their spouse before, and they can just be mutually know that they're not going to be each other's true love or anything because of that. So little does he know, Valentina, who I don't remember what her family name is right now, she was married to someone who was killed. Obviously, she's a widow. And that man was gay. And again, remember, these are backwards. Anything happening in the mob, imagine that they're like 200 years ago. And she was his beard. And she actually lived with him and his lover. Like, the lover would come to their house. And so they never actually consummated their marriage, ever. They didn't even sleep in the same bed anymore after, I think they were married for 4 years. And so her husband, her new husband, doesn't know that she's a virgin. And it's a very interesting thing to him because the lover of her dead husband, he was an outsider. And so that's a danger to the outfit that this high-ranking member of their family was gay and his partner was an outsider. But Valentina, she loved him. He was a friend to her. He was a good husband and confidant, and he treated her well. She promised never to betray him. But now she has a husband who's the capo, and he needs to know who this person was. So Val and Dante have a very interesting relationship. It's one of those of like, he wasn't never planning to love the person, and the way that him and Val connect, she pursues him in some really interesting ways because she's like, I already had one marriage where I was ignored and pushed to the side, and now I'm married to you, who you like women, and you don't want to sleep with me because you're only imagining your dead wife. So it's a beautiful relationship, and I really, really loved reading about that. Next, we have Bound by Hatred, which is Matteo Vitello, who is Luca's brother and second in command, and Gianna Scuderi, who is Aria's next youngest sister. Now, Gianna gets promised to Matteo in the first book, so we know about this. And Aria tries to encourage her that it'll be okay. They'll be married to brothers. Isn't that exciting? And Gianna fights her family tooth and nail. She doesn't want to live the same lives that they do. She doesn't want to be a part of this mob life. She just wants to go to school and live a regular life and not be used for a political maneuverings. Matteo, because how much Gianna doesn't want him, he wants her. And he has to pretend that it's just because he wants to punish her. And by punish her, he means like, oh, she doesn't want me, I'm going to make her. And not the sexual kind. That too, because these are novels, but he's just like, I love your passion, I love your fire. I don't want to put it out, but I have to pretend like I do for our families because they don't want you to get what you want. It's complicated, I know. It's strange. You'll understand if you read it. Her father's horrible. We hate Scuderi. We hate him so much. And he hates his daughter Gianna because of her willfulness and her craziness. And he wouldn't let her marry Matteo if he knew that Matteo wanted her because he liked her. Because he basically wants to punish her by marrying her off to someone he doesn't like, which is bananas. And we start off Bound in Hatred where Gianna, in the previous novel, has run away. And she's going to go live the life she wants to live. And Aria helps her escape. And she's on the run. So we start this book with Matteo is hunting her down. It's intense. Then we have Bound in Temptation, and this is Liliana Scuderi, who is the youngest girl in the Scuderi family, and she is in love with her bodyguard. So this is a bodyguard romance, and we've seen Romero, who's the bodyguard, we've seen him around quite a lot. He is a bodyguard for the Vitellos, and so he has been around, he's protected Aria, he's protected Gianna, and he's been around Lily. And so when Lily is forced to be engaged to this like 60-year-old man, Romero, who we've been seeing their love story grow over the past couple books, and everyone's been warning them that this isn't going to work out. He's not a high-ranking member of the Mafia. Her being the daughter of the second in command, she's not going to be able to just marry whoever she wants. This is also a cross-relationship issue because Lily is the daughter of, the second in command of the outfit, and Romero works for the Familia. And so we start to have, after only a few years of peace, we really start to have a breakdown of these relations that were brokered by the marriage of Aria and Luca and then strengthened by the relationship of Matteo and Gianna. We start to see things crumble. And after having read this whole series now, I hate to say it because this couple, this is really the quote-unquote sweetest romance you're probably going to see in the Bound in Blood series because it is a slow burn, age gap, and it's this beautiful growing of the relationship compared to the other ones where they were mostly arranged marriages. But the war that happens because of these two, a lot of people die and a lot of bad things happen. And the final straw is the New York Familia basically stealing Lily away to marry Romero. So that's something that happens here, and it hurts. I don't want to say that, but it really, whereas, Aria, she didn't want to marry Luca. It ended up being love. It did. It's beautiful. They have a beautiful marriage. But Lily didn't do what she was supposed to do, and now there's a war, and people are dying for it. And so she's very like Helen of Troy. There's a war that happens because of this marriage, and it's sad having seen all the destruction that's caused, even though I'm happy that these two got the love they wanted to have. I told you I had a lot to say about these. I'm really diving in to this series because I love it so much. So next we have book number 5, which is called Bound by Vengeance. And so now this is the last book in the Bound in Blood that really has new stuff. And I'll explain what I mean by that soon. And this is also our first novel that really is going to be, it sets up the Camorra Chronicles, okay? So this book, we have Cara, who is a daughter of a trader in the Camorra, okay? So her family betrayed Falcone, and as a present to his enforcer, Falcone gives Cara to this man named Growl, who that's all he's called because his throat was injured when he was a child. Someone tried to strangle him, so he has a really growly voice, so he's called Growl. And he is the enforcer for Falcone. And he's also his bastard son. And everyone looks at him as the most brutal person that we know. He's just horrible because he is the enforcing hand of Falcone law. And so the Camoras run Las Vegas. They are under the hand of Falcone Sr. He is okay with sex trafficking, drugs to children, raping, all these evil things. Like, Las Vegas is gross and harsh, and everyone on the east side, so the Chicago, Minneapolis, New York, like all of those mafia groups, like we do not get along with Las Vegas. It doesn't happen. And so this situation with Kara and Growl, it's a little bit, well, not a little bit, it is like a captive lover romance, except Growl, who we would probably call him a sociopath because he doesn't understand a lot of the emotions that Kara has. Also, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Twist Me, except Growl is a better person than Julian from that series. But he knows that Kara was given to him because he's supposed to punish her by raping her and abusing her. Like, he knows that. But he has always wanted a friend and someone who would love him. So Growl kind of goes about wooing Kara in some interesting ways. And now one of the things you'll notice right away too is Growl has these 2 pet hounds, and these hounds are his just little baby loves, okay? They also go with him when he has to dispense justice sometimes. But when you see a man who his dogs love him so much, you usually know that he's not as bad as he might seem, right? So Growl is a very interesting character. There aren't a ton of POVs from his head in this one. Most of it is all from Kara, and then there'll be little bits from him. But yeah, Kara was given to him to punish, and he takes it more as like, yes, he was given a friend. And no one is looking for this person. No one's doing anything. And she also still has a sister and a mother who are being held captive by Camorra members because she still has family in, I think it's in Chicago. Yes, it's in Chicago. And they want to use this woman as like leverage against Luca. So we spend most of the time of this book in Las Vegas with Kara and Growl. And so without spoilers of how it all goes down, the Falcone, he actually has 4 sons who are in boarding school in the UK. And we've heard about them a few different times throughout the series. And at the end of this book, Growl and Kara end up in Chicago with Luca, who takes them in. And remember, Growl is the bastard son of Falcone. And to get away, he rescues Kara's sister and mother, and they bring them to Luca, and he also kills Falcone to do this. So the Las Vegas Camorra is left without a capo and kind of free-falling. At the same time that Growl is on his way out after having done all this, the sons of Falcone, which is Remo, Nino, Savio, and I was doing so good, I just forgot his name. Oh my gosh, I just forgot his name. And there's a younger one. They are making their way back to Las Vegas. And they are some of the most brutal men we'll meet. Or so everybody else thinks, because we're getting there. So that is where we have now kind of had an intro to the Las Vegas Camorra. We see how brutal and horrible it is there. And we think that, wow, Remo and Nino, who are the oldest by kind of a lot, like they're like 10 years older than the younger two, are really going to be crazy there. And like, we just think Las Vegas is a wasteland, and these guys just come in brutally and take over the town. So there are 2 more books that are in the Bound in Blood series. However, they are both sequels to both. There's one called Bound by Love, which is Luca and Aria, and it is a second book to them. So it actually redoubles. And this is why I say, like, these are the 2 you don't have to read in this order, because it literally goes over everything we've already seen. And it was just kind of like, it was kind of boring to me, even though there was some new stuff and it was a lot of love stuff between the 2 of them, which was great. It just kind of felt like a grinding halt to the momentum we were building with the overarching story. But at the time, I was super excited to read it because I usually like sequels. It's just that 50% of the book was just re-going through. And see, there is also a book called Luca Vitello, which is Bound by Honor from Luca's point of view. So there's literally 3 different versions of some of this stuff happening, and I didn't need that much of it. And then there is Bound by the Past, which is the same thing, but about Dante and Valentina, and it re-goes over everything that happens in Bound by Love, but from these guys' point of view, because now Dante and Luca, they are fully at war with each other after the events of Bound by Temptation. So yeah, so that's everything in the Bound in Blood series. And then we get into the Camorra Chronicles, which I didn't know if I was going to love these or not, okay? Because like I said, we know what's happening in Las Vegas, and I know these books were going to be just as dark, and I was scared. Like, I was scared, but I wanted to know about Remo and Nino. I already knew something that happened with Remo because it's shown from Dante's point of view in Bound by the Past. And I was like, okay, let's see what's going to happen. So the first one in the Camorra Chronicles is called Twisted Loyalties. And in this, we are reintroduced to Fabiano Scuderi, who is the youngest sibling of Aria Scuderi, who married Luca. So he is the son of the second in command of Dante's outfit in Chicago, okay? So, his father tries to have him killed, like the Evil Queen style from Snow White. He has, after his 3 daughters have all been such a disappointment to him, and they're all married to people in New York, which they're now at war with, he takes his son, who's only 15, and he sends one of his men to kill him. And this man gives Fabiano $20 and a knife and lets him go and says, get as far away from here as you can. Until you can fight back, don't let anyone know that you're still alive. And he just lets him go. And he ends up making the acquaintance of Remo Camorra. And they fight and die. They fight together, fight and kill together. And Fabiano ends up being the enforcer for the Camorra. So then we skip ahead 6 years, and this is a very young mafia. Like, Remo's only, I think he's like 25 when he starts taking over, and so it's a pretty young group. And so Fabiano is the enforcer, and the Camorra owns a lot of really interesting enterprises, and one of them is this fight club, which isn't like underground fight club. Like, it literally is a MMA fight club where sometimes they have fight to the deaths. And we meet this girl named Leona, who she's just come to Las Vegas to stay with her father because her mother is in rehab. Her mother is a prostitute and drug addict, and she wants to try to have a new start with her dad. However, her dad is a gambling addict, and so she's out of the flames and into the pot, or out of the pot and in the flame, whatever you want to call it. And she has the horrible luck to be walking through town, and Fabiano sees her. And she has no idea who he is. She doesn't know what the Camorra is. She doesn't know that the mafia runs Las Vegas. And he sees her and wants her. And that's it for her. He helps her find a job at the fight club. He starts a relationship with her that is like kept on the DL. And basically, like, there's no way out for her now. Like, there's no way out if she wants it. Like, she is with Fabiano. She will live and die with him. But the thing that's scary is that the Camorra, while they don't need arranged marriages, they don't really care about that. They don't really care about women. They don't want any of them to have distracted loyalties. And so Fabiano, who is the enforcer and is loyal only to Remo, because Remo saved his life, gave him a job, gave him purpose, he now has twisted loyalties because he loves Leona. And this is our first up close and personal look at Remo, and he seems like a scary mother effer, and we're scared. Like, there feels like real danger that he could snap and kill Leona or Fabiano. And it was hard. Like, I read this book like with one eye open, but I love Fabiano, and I had seen glimpses of him in the other books, and I really wanted to see who he was going to become. And yeah, so that was our first entry. Then we have Twisted Emotions, which, as I said, they don't have arranged marriages in the Camorra. They don't care about that. But there is someone that Remo hates more than anyone else, who Fabiano hates more than anyone else, and that is the Chicago outfit. And they decide to try one of these arranged marriages with the Familia in New York to try to, you know, fight Dante together. So Remo brokers an arranged marriage between his brother Nino, his second in command, and one of Luca's nieces, whose name is Chiara Vitello. So the thing with Chiara is that there's her and her sister, and her father was a traitor. And so she was sent to live with one of her uncles, and when she was 13 years old, he raped her. He raped her 4 different times, and everyone kept it a secret, or the people who know kept it a secret. And now Luca is giving her a chance to help broker peace and offers her to Nino, which she's terrified about because everybody's heard about the Camorra. We've heard how crazy they are. We've seen how brutal they are in a previous book. And she's so scared because she's being given to this man and she's not a virgin anymore. She never had a chance to be one. That's a line from the book. Ooh, I'm going to cry. This book, guys, is so beautiful. It's so beautiful because Nino is a psychopath. I think that's the one that it is. Feel free to correct me. I always get this wrong. He, because of some trauma in his and Nino's past, he cannot feel emotions. He can recognize them. He can mimic them. He can, you know, go about his business, but he doesn't feel emotions. But he sees the logical sense in this arranged marriage. And he's not a horrible person. He has, you know, it's so hard to explain until you're reading it in his head. But he needs some therapy is basically the point. So he gets himself married to Chiara. They're about to have their wedding night. She is freaking terrified, not only because she was raped, but also because this is Nino, and she's so afraid he's going to find out, and so she just can't relax, and she's freaking out. And he's about to touch her, and she just panics. And Nino, who is a good reader of people, looks at her, lifts her chin, and says, "Who raped you?" And she tells him. She says, "It was my uncle when I was 13. And she doesn't think he's going to care. She's like, "Would I still bleed?" Because I didn't even talk about this. They're supposed to be a virgin because they do this thing called the showing of the sheets. And on your wedding night, you bleed on the sheet. And then the next morning, it gets presented to everybody, which is freaking ridiculous because you don't have to. Anyway, I'm not going to get into the sex education part of this. But she's like, "Well, if I'm still and again, because he's analytical, he's like, "Yes, if you are this tense and I still were to force myself into you, you would bleed. But that's not going to happen tonight. I will present them with bloody sheets when I murder your uncle on this bed, and I'll show them the sheets." So on his wedding night, he tells her, "Go put your clothes back on. We're not going to worry about that. Like, you're safe." You're mine now to protect. You belong to the Camorra, and we are going to get justice for you. And this fucking uncle who raped her, he's there at her wedding. And so Remo and Nino, they go to talk to Luca. They tell Luca, this guy raped your niece. I'm getting justice for my wife. And they brutally murder him on the wedding bed. And it is... I never, when I'm reading these books, like, want to see the blood and gore parts of them. Like, you know, these are still romances at the end of the day, and that's what I'm there for. I cannot tell you the sweet, sweet victory I feel when Nino and Remo stab this man to death. Like, you don't see the whole thing, like, don't worry about too much of it, because we're in Chiara's point of view when this starts, and then, like, she leaves, so we don't have to see it all, but it was so good. And so this entire book it's beautiful. Nino promises in the beginning, he's like, would you like me to go elsewhere for my pleasure? Again, he's very analytical, and she's like, yes, I would really like that. And then, but she starts to fall in love with all the things he does for her. Because he says, he's like, I can't feel love, but I want you to be cared for. I want you to feel welcome. This is your family. He buys a piano for her because she loves to play, and her family never cared if she wanted to play. This entire book is about this slow burn of this arranged marriage, and it's so beautiful. This one also has a sequel one called Twisted Bonds, and this book didn't annoy me the same way that the Bound by Love, Bound by the Past did, because again, we do redo a lot of things we'll see, but there's also a lot of new stuff that we get to see take place that I really enjoyed. Next, the book that I was waiting for and the most nervous for was called Twisted Pride. So this one is about Remo, the capo, the most brutal man we've ever seen, this vicious creature who by this point we know isn't quite that vicious, but he still is a capo, he still is a scary man. We never should think that these are, you know, squishy, these are not marshmallows, these are not beta males. But he has come up with a plan to finally break Dante and to help Fabiano get revenge, because Fabiano wants revenge against his father for trying to have him killed and for kicking him out of his family. So the next marriage that's supposed to take place is between Serafina, who is Dante's niece, and one of the guys who's running the Minneapolis branch of the Chicago outfit. And his name is Donatello, which, so they're going to have their wedding, and Remo and Nino and Fabiano, they kidnap Serafina on her wedding day and bring her to Vegas. And Remo's plan is to make Serafina consent to sex with him. And that is the plan. And his plan is to have stolen her wedding night from her intended, to make Dante willing to do anything to get her back, and honestly to make them think that they're doing much worse things to her than they are. So this is a captive romance. It is. However, I've never read one that worked so well for me as this one did, because one of the things, so Fabiano is actually her, like, cousin, like, she knows him, and so she's pleading with him because their parents are brother and sister, and but Fabiano's like, my loyalty's to the Camorra now, and he tells her, he's like, Remo will respect you if you don't back down. And he's like, I'm not here to help you, I'm on his side, but I'm telling you, if you will not back down, if you will be brave, he will respect you and things will go a lot better for you. If you don't beg and you don't ask for favors and you fight, he will respect that in you. And that's what Serafina does. She does not bend to him at all. She is this fierce woman who has no one on her side. She's alone in Las Vegas, in the home of her enemy, missing her twin brother, her parents, to a degree, the man she was supposed to marry, like, that was an arranged marriage too, but he wasn't cruel to, you know, like, this isn't a bad person she was going to marry. And we watch as her and Remo just break down each other's defenses. And this is so good. It's so sexy because she still always has the power, right? Because he isn't going to rape her. They don't stand for rape there. Even though that's what we've been told in all the other books. We've been told how horrible the Camorra is. We've seen what happens to Serafina from Dante's point of view. If you've read Bound by the Past, you've already seen how this arc works out, which was me. I read that one first, and I was so excited to read it from Serafina and Remo's point of view and to see what was going on between these two, that it's even possible for them to be in love, or that I would believe that they were, or that I could ever be rooting for it. The series I talked about in the beginning of this video, the Twist Me trilogy, I was never rooting for that couple to be a thing, right? That is one of the few series that I've ever read where I would have been happy if the heroine had killed him by the end and the happy ending was her escaping. But I was a twisted shit and I read the entire thing to see what was going to happen with them. But Remo and Serafina are just, I don't know how else to describe it. It's amazing. It's amazing. So I already talked about Twisted Bonds. And then the final one that's out so far, there's still a couple more books in this series planned. But the final one is Twisted Hearts, and that is about Savio Falcone, who is the second youngest brother. He's only 22 during this book. And then Gemma, who is part of one of the older families in the Falcone, which there are a lot, or not the Falcone, the Camorra. There are a lot of the older families, and Remo lets them follow their traditions that they want to, as long as they don't contradict what his overall rule is. And so Gemma, she's been in love with Savio since she was 10 years old. And when she's 16 years old, she gets promised to Savio's friend. And Savio, who is 19, realizes, or no, he's 20, because he's 4 years older than her. He realizes that he wants Gemma. She's the prettiest girl in Vegas, and he is the brother to the capo, so he can have her. So he breaks up her he finds a way to break up her engagement with the other guy and gets himself engaged to Gemma, but he's not in any hurry to marry her. And he continues his whoring ways and all the things that he was doing before, because now he has her locked down and she can't marry anyone else, but he's not in a hurry to marry her. So Savio's kind of a dick. And this book is about their drawn out engagement and then what it's going to take to finally shake Savio into love with Gemma. So yeah, okay. I told you this video would be epic. I really wanted to dive into each of these books and tell you more details about them. By the time I was done with the series, okay, so there's 12 books in this. My favorite couple is a tie between Nino and Chiara and Remo and Serafina. I probably would pick Remo and Serafina just because it is everything that I love. Like, I love a twisted love where they hate to want each other and then they just have no choice because nobody else can see them the way that they do. There's also a twist to this story that I won't share that broke me. Like, I was sobbing. It's so good. But also Nino, I adore him and how good he is to Chiara, and their story arc, especially in Twisted Bonds, is amazing. But I really loved the Camorra Chronicles even more than the Bound and Blood series. I would say you could start with the Camorra Chronicles if you want to, because that is like starting, it's starting a new series. I also do suggest you reading it in order if you want to, if you're interested in these books, if you want to get into this world. you can. She also has a couple books that offshoot from the series. Like there is a book that's about Serafina's parents, which I haven't read yet. I want to read it soon. And then there's another one coming that's an offshoot as well. That's about other characters who aren't in the main families. So yeah, so there we go. That's just, you know, I was going to say a little bit, but there's an hour worth about some Mafia books that I love. Please send me your suggestions. I do have some on a TBR list that I haven't got to them yet as well. But I'd love to hear some of your suggestions for Mafia books that I should read. Let me know who's your favorite couple in this series. If you've read it, let me know if there's any of the books you want more information on. A few of these do have trigger warnings, but on the whole, it's mostly just violence that the trigger warning is. Bound by Vengeance has some like possible assaults in there. And then Twisted Emotions, and those are most of the two that have like severe, like you should check out the warnings first. Otherwise, it's usually violence, and most of the sex things are consensual, like everything's consensual. So anyway, thank you so much for watching this. Thank you. If you've made it to the end of this, you're amazing. Remember to check out my Amazon affiliate link down below if you want to purchase any of these. I would make a little bit of a commission off of that, so that's cool. But yeah, I'm super excited to see your recs, and I hope you enjoyed talking the dark world of Mafia with me. So have a wonderful day. I can't wait to see you in the next video. Bye.